Some letters aren't meant to be delivered, but sometimes they find the one person who needs them most. When a struggling single mom writes a heartfelt thank you note to a stranger who left her a kind review, she has no idea that note will land on the desk of the billionaire who owns the company she works for. And what began as gratitude becomes a story about fate, kindness, and the power of being seen. If this story touches your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Between Raindrop Stories, where every storm leads someone home. The night shift at Harvest Roasters always ended the same way. The smell of burnt espresso lingering in the air, the faint hum of refrigerators, and a few tired lights left on for the staff closing up. Emily Carter wiped down the counter for the 5th time, humming softly to keep herself awake. Her apron was stained, her hands smelled faintly of coffee beans, and her mind drifted to the bills waiting on her kitchen table. Rent, groceries, a late notice from the electric company. It had been one of those months that never seemed to end. Still, she smiled when the delivery driver from the last shift waved goodbye. She always did. Kindness, she believed, didn't cost extra. Earlier that week, a stranger had left a note tucked under the tip jar. It wasn't money, just a small folded piece of paper. When Emily opened it, the handwriting stopped her. You were kind when you didn't have to be. The world needs more people like you. Thank you. From someone who needed it today. No name, no signature. Just that. She'd found it on the same day her car battery had died. Her manager had scolded her for being late, and her 5-year-old son Noah had come home from school with a fever. She'd cried in the storeroom for a few minutes after reading it. Not because of the words themselves, but because someone had noticed her at all. Now, standing in the quiet of the empty cafe, Emily took a deep breath, grabbed a pen, and pulled out a napkin. Her handwriting was messy from fatigue, but her heart was steady. To the kind stranger who left me that note, I don't know who you are, but I needed your words more than you'll ever know. You reminded me that what I do matters, that even small kindnesses still ripple somewhere. So, thank you, wherever you are. She folded the napkin carefully and tucked it into an envelope. She didn't have an address, but she remembered the name on the original receipt from that day. Mr. R. Lawson. He'd ordered a black coffee. No sugar. No name, no small talk. She smiled softly. Mysterious man with no sugar. Let's see if the world gets this letter to you. She sealed the envelope and, on a whim, dropped it into the outgoing company mail pile at the back of the store. The same pile that went to Harvest Roasters HQ downtown. She didn't know that was where everything would begin. The next morning, in a glass-walled corner office 30 stories above the city, Ryan Lawson, CEO and founder of Harvest Roasters, was sifting through routine mail. Invoices, supplier notes, marketing updates. Then one simple white envelope with his name handwritten across the front. No return address. He frowned, turning it over. No branding, no company seal, just something about it that felt personal. He opened it, and as he read the napkin folded neatly inside, the world seemed to slow down. To the kind stranger who left me that note, I don't know who you are, but I needed your words more than you'll ever know. You reminded me that what I do matters, that even small kindnesses still ripple somewhere. So, thank you, wherever you are. He leaned back in his chair, his pulse steady, but his expression unreadable. He hadn't left anyone a note, at least not that he remembered. But someone out there thought he had, and was thanking him for something he didn't do. And yet, the sincerity of the words caught him off guard. For a man who'd built an empire selling coffee to millions, he couldn't remember the last time something this small, this human, had reached him. He looked out the window, the morning sun cutting through the skyline like a promise. He told his assistant softly, "Find out where this came from." And just like that, a letter meant for a stranger found its way into the hands of the man who could change her life.
Ryan Lawson wasn't used to being curious about people. In his world, curiosity was a liability. Every decision measured, every interaction filtered through PR. But that letter, something about it had stayed with him. Maybe it was the sincerity in her words. Maybe it was how rare that kind of gratitude had become in his world of boardrooms and contracts. Or maybe, and this he wouldn't admit even to himself, it was because for the first time in years, someone had spoken to him without wanting anything in return. He read the napkin again that night. The handwriting wasn't perfect. Some words leaned too close together, others faintly smudged by what might have been coffee or tears. But it was honest, raw, unfiltered. "You reminded me that what I do matters." He whispered the line aloud, then smiled faintly. "I wish I had." By morning, Ryan had done something completely out of character. He'd asked his assistant, Laura, to trace where the letter had come from. "Start with the distribution list from the downtown branches," he said, sipping his coffee. "One of them sent this through internal mail." Laura raised an eyebrow. "Should I ask why?" Smirking, he said, "No, just call it curiosity." Within hours, she returned with a file. Found her, Emily Carter, part-time barista, Midtown branch, single mom, hired 6 months ago. Ryan nodded slowly, scanning her file. She made barely above minimum wage. Her performance reviews were excellent, reliable, friendly, uplifting presence for customers. Something twisted in his chest. "How many people like her do we have?" he murmured. "Thousands," Laura replied softly. He nodded again, closing the folder. "Then maybe it's time I met one." 2 days later, Ryan walked into the Midtown Cafe. No entourage, no chauffeur, no assistant. Just a black coat and a baseball cap that hid his face. The hum of grinders, soft jazz, and quiet chatter filled the room. Emily was there, exactly as her file described her. Hair tied back, apron smudged, smile genuine even at 7 a.m. on a rainy Wednesday. She was handing a cup to a customer, laughing softly at something they said. There was a tiredness in her eyes, yes, but behind it, something radiant. When she turned toward him, Ryan's chest tightened unexpectedly. It wasn't recognition, it was realization. She looked like the kind of person who still believed people could be good. He ordered quietly, keeping his voice neutral. "Black coffee, no sugar." Her head lifted slightly, the same order as before. He caught her hesitation, the faint flicker of memory in her expression. "Coming right up," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. He sat near the window, watching her move through the cafe, calm, graceful, unaware that the man she was serving owned the entire company whose logo sat on her sleeve. She refilled napkin dispensers, restocked sugar packets, and even offered a free cookie to a teenager who looked cold and wet from the rain. He noticed every small gesture, the kind that didn't make headlines, but changed someone's day. He stayed longer than he meant to. When she finally brought over his refill, she smiled again. "You've been here a while. Do you work nearby?" "Sort of," he said, carefully. "I run a few things." "Must be nice," she said with a soft laugh. "I just make the coffee." He shook his head. "No, you make someone's morning. That's harder." Her laugh faded, replaced by quiet surprise. "You sound like someone who needed coffee and perspective." "Maybe I did." Their eyes met for a second, the kind of glance that feels like the start of something neither person understands yet. That evening, Ryan returned to his penthouse with her face still in his mind. He thought of her small smile, the way she greeted customers by name, and the tone in her voice when she said, "I just make the coffee." He sat at his desk and stared at her letter again. For years he'd been signing contracts worth millions, but none of those words had ever mattered like this napkin did. He made a decision then. If he couldn't tell her who he really was, he could still make her life a little easier. By the next morning, quiet changes began. A corporate initiative email went out to all branches announcing new health benefits for part-time employees, small performance bonuses, flexible scheduling for parents. Emily didn't know it, but the note she'd written out of gratitude had just started changing the entire company she worked for. That afternoon, she found something strange. When she opened her locker, a plain envelope fell out. No name, no note, just a printed message. "Keep smiling. It matters more than you think." Her breath caught. It was typed, unsigned, but something about the words felt achingly familiar. She looked around the empty break room, half expecting to see someone standing there. But there was silence, and the faint sound of rain starting again outside.
The next few weeks unfolded like quiet miracles. Emily didn't notice them at first, not consciously. A new coffee grinder arrived to replace the one that always jammed. Her schedule shifted so she could pick up Noah from kindergarten on time. And her manager, usually strict and stingy, suddenly became understanding about childcare. Small things, but to someone who'd learned to survive on small mercies, they meant everything. She still didn't know how or why it was happening, and she definitely didn't know that each one traced back to a single name, Ryan Lawson. Meanwhile, across town, Ryan was finding excuses to visit that same cafe. He told himself it was coincidence, that he just liked the coffee here. But deep down, he knew it wasn't about caffeine. It was about her. He sat in the same corner seat, watching her work. Every morning, he told himself, "I'll just say hello and leave." Every morning, he stayed longer. The way she smiled at strangers, the way she laughed when the coffee machine sputtered, the way she wiped her hands on her apron and muttered, "You're doing your best, Em," when she thought no one was listening. It was like watching light exist in a place that had forgotten it could. And every time he left, he felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. One afternoon, the rain came down harder than usual, the kind that turned the city into a watercolor blur. Emily was closing up when she noticed a man still sitting by the window. Ryan. Cap pulled low, hands around a paper cup gone cold. She walked over, towel in hand. "We're about to close, sir." He looked up, his smile faint. "Sorry, lost track of time." She hesitated. "It's the rain, isn't it? Makes you forget the world for a while." He chuckled softly. "Something like that." "Do you live nearby?" He nodded. "Too nearby sometimes. Feels like I'm everywhere but home." She tilted her head. "That sounds lonely." "It is." His voice softened. "But I think that's my fault." She didn't know why, but she sat down opposite him just for a moment. "You know," she said,
When things feel heavy, sometimes I write letters." He blinked. "Letters?" "Yeah, to people I'll never send them to. Helps me let go." He smiled, heart twisting. "Does it work?" "Sometimes," she shrugged. "Sometimes it just reminds me that I still care." He studied her quietly. "You sound like someone who still believes people can change." Her eyes met his. "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of surviving the hard stuff?" For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain filled the silence, soft, rhythmic, forgiving. Then she stood, embarrassed. "I should finish closing." Ryan nodded. "Of course. Thanks for the coffee." As she walked away, he whispered softly, "Thank you." That night, Emily found another envelope slipped beneath the cafe door. Her name was written across the front, neat, typed font this time. Inside was a note and a small card. "For the days you forget how much you matter. Thank you for being light in someone else's storm. A friend." Attached was a gift card, a month of groceries from the store near her apartment. She covered her mouth, tears welling up before she could stop them. "Whoever you are, you have no idea how much this means," she whispered into the quiet cafe. Meanwhile, back in his office, Ryan sat in the dark watching the rain streak the windows. Laura stood by the door, hesitant. "Sir, the board is asking about your schedule. You've been visiting the field branches a lot lately." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm just remembering why I started this company." She crossed her arms. "You're changing things, Ryan. Payroll adjustments, benefits, bonuses for staff you've never even met. What's going on?" He looked at her. "Do you know what it's like to read a thank you letter from someone who has every reason to give up and realize you're the one who should be grateful instead?" Laura's expression softened. "You found her, didn't you?" He nodded. "And she's everything this company was supposed to stand for. Everything I forgot while chasing numbers." The next day, he watched Emily again, not from the shadows this time. She was laughing with a customer, Noah sitting quietly in the corner drawing superheroes on napkins. Ryan's gaze softened as he watched her wipe her son's cheek with gentle fingers, then stand and greet another customer like nothing in her life was difficult. He realized then she didn't need saving, she just needed to be seen, and that changed everything. That evening, he made one more quiet decision. A message went out company-wide. Harvest Roasters is proud to announce a new employee recognition program, the Letter of Thanks. Every quarter, we'll highlight a staff member whose kindness makes a difference. Because success isn't built by profits, but by people. At the bottom of the announcement was a single quote, "Even small kindnesses still ripple somewhere. Emily C." She didn't know it yet, but the letter she'd written to a stranger was about to echo across every branch of the company she worked for.
The letter came on a Thursday morning, tucked neatly into her apron pocket between shifts. At first, Emily thought it was another schedule notice, maybe a shift change or a policy update. But when she opened it, her breath caught. "Congratulations, Emily Carter. You've been selected for our company's new employee recognition feature. Please report to Harvest Roasters headquarters this Friday at 10 a.m. for a brief interview and photo session." She read it twice, then a third time, heart racing. Her manager beamed when she looked up. "You deserve it, Emily. Corporate's been watching. They said your kindness stood out." "My kindness?" she echoed, stunned. He nodded. "Apparently, someone wrote a letter about you." Her lips parted. "A letter?" He nodded. "Guess your good deeds have a bigger audience than you thought." Friday came too fast. Emily barely slept. Noah had helped her pick out her best outfit, a soft cream blouse and jeans that weren't frayed at the knees.
"Mom," he had said proudly, "you look like a boss." "I just make coffee," she had teased. But inside, something was stirring, a quiet hope she hadn't felt in years. Harvest Roasters HQ was nothing like her little cafe. Glass, steel, and the smell of money. Every surface gleamed. Every voice echoed. When she stepped inside, she immediately felt out of place. Her reflection looked small in the mirrored elevator doors, her simple clothes outshone by sleek suits and polished shoes. A woman from HR met her in the lobby, smiling politely. "Ms. Carter, this way, please. Mr. Lawson is expecting you." She froze. "Mr. Lawson?" "Yes, Ryan Lawson, our CEO." Her heart skipped. The name hit like lightning. The same R. Lawson she had written on that napkin weeks ago. Coincidence, she told herself. It has to be. Still, her palms began to sweat as they stepped into the executive elevator. The top floor was quiet, almost reverent. Sunlight spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the skyline beyond. At the end of a long hallway, a glass door bore a single name. Ryan Lawson, founder and CEO. The assistant opened it with a knock. "Sir, Miss Carter is here." "Send her in," came the calm voice from inside. She stepped through and froze. It was him, the quiet man from the cafe, the one who sat by the window in the rain, the one who said he ran a few things. Her breath caught. "You!" Ryan stood, looking at her like he'd been waiting a lifetime. "Hello, Emily." She blinked, speechless. "You're—" He smiled faintly. "Ryan Lawson, yes, I own the company." Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "I don't understand. The note, the letter, all of this, you?" He nodded slowly. "You wrote a thank you letter to a stranger. That letter landed on my desk, and it reminded me of something I'd forgotten a long time ago." "What's that?" she whispered. "That people still matter more than profits." Emily sank into the chair opposite his desk, still in shock. Her hands trembled in her lap. "You'd changed everything at the cafe. The hours, the bonuses, the policy, that was you?" He smiled softly. "You inspired it. Your letter made me look at what we'd built and realize how far we'd drifted from our roots. You reminded me why Harvest Roasters existed in the first place, to bring warmth into people's lives." Tears welled in her eyes. "I just wanted to say thank you to someone who was kind to me." "And you did," he said gently. "You said it to everyone, including me." For a moment, silence filled the room, the kind that hums with everything words can't say. Finally, Ryan spoke again. "You don't know me, Emily, not really. But in a way, I think you might know me better than anyone here, because you saw something I forgot to see in myself." She shook her head, smiling through her tears. "I didn't do anything special." "Yes, you did," he said quietly. "You were kind. That's rarer than success." He reached into a drawer and placed a sealed envelope on the desk between them. "This is for you, a permanent position. Better pay, full benefits, and a transfer, if you want, to any location, even corporate. You've earned it." Emily stared at the envelope and then looked up at him. "Why are you doing this?" He leaned back, thoughtful. "Because when I read your letter, it didn't feel like a thank you. It felt like a reminder." "Of what?" He smiled softly. "That sometimes the smallest act of gratitude can rebuild an entire heart." She wiped her eyes, laughing shakily. "You're really not what I expected from a CEO." "Good," he said, smiling. Neither are you what I expected from an employee." She laughed again, a sound that filled the office like sunlight. As she stood to leave, he added, "Emily, would you do one thing for me?" She turned. "What's that?" He handed her a fresh cup of coffee, simple and black. No sugar, just like the one I ordered that day. Her eyes widened. "So, it was you?" He chuckled. "No, that part is the funny thing. I never left a note under your tip jar, but I think whoever did was meant to lead you to me." Emily smiled softly, blinking away tears. "Then, I guess both of us were exactly where we needed to be." That night, Ryan sat in his office long after everyone had gone home. Emily's thank you letter, now framed, hung beside his degrees and awards. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the company's future. He was thinking about its heart, and about the woman who reminded him it was still beating.
The days that followed felt like waking up inside a dream Emily never meant to have. Her photo was on the company's internal website, smiling, shy, holding a coffee cup, under the headline, "Meet Emily Carter, the heart behind Harvest Roasters." At first, it was overwhelming. Coworkers congratulated her. Customers recognized her from the local paper. Even her manager looked at her differently, as if he was just realizing the quiet woman behind the counter had somehow changed everything. But through all the noise, Emily stayed the same. She still wiped down tables with care, still gave free cookies to cold teenagers, still smiled at strangers. Only now she knew someone, somewhere, saw her. Ryan visited her cafe once a week after that, sometimes for business updates, sometimes just for coffee. They talked about everything: her son, her struggles, his company, his regrets. There was a gentleness in their conversations, a rhythm that didn't need words to fill it. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was something quieter. The kind of connection built not on sparks, but on understanding. One afternoon, after closing, Emily found herself alone again. The cafe was still, the smell of roasted beans lingering in the air. She reached under the counter for a napkin and smiled. There was something poetic about it, she thought. The first letter had been written on a napkin, too. She took a pen and began to write. "Dear Mr. Lawson, I used to think kindness was invisible, the kind of thing people gave and forgot. But you proved me wrong. You showed me that kindness doesn't just ripple, it returns. It finds its way back even when you don't expect it. That first letter I wrote, it was never meant to find you. It was just my way of thanking a stranger who reminded me I still mattered. But maybe that's what fate is, a thank you that ends up in the right hands. So this time, I'm not writing to a stranger. I'm writing to the man who turned my small words into something bigger than both of us. Thank you. Not for the job, not for the change, but for seeing me. With gratitude, Emily." She folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and left it on his desk during her next visit to headquarters. No fanfare, no ceremony, just quiet truth. That evening, Ryan returned from a board meeting and found it waiting for him. He read it slowly, every line pulling him back to that first napkin, that first unexpected moment of honesty. And then he smiled, not the practiced, press-ready smile of a CEO, but the small, private smile of a man who finally understood why he'd built everything in the first place. He took out a pen and a fresh card. "Dear Emily, once a stranger wrote me a thank you letter she never meant for me to read. It reminded me that leadership isn't about power, it's about people, about showing up, seeing them, hearing them. You changed this company,
Not with numbers, but with heart. And you changed me. Some letters start a conversation. Yours started a legacy. Ryan. Weeks later, that same exchange, her letter and his, was framed and displayed in every Harvest Roasters branch across the country. Underneath, a small plaque read, "Kindness doesn't need an audience. It just needs a beginning." Emily stood one evening holding Noah's hand as they looked at the display in her cafe. He tugged her sleeve. "Mom, that's your handwriting." She smiled. "It is. And that man next to you, he's your boss." She hesitated, then smiled softly. "He's my friend." Noah grinned. "You think he'll write you another letter?" She laughed quietly, eyes glistening. "Maybe someday." Later that night, as she closed up the cafe, Emily looked out at the rain-soaked street, the same one where she'd once felt invisible, unseen, forgotten. Now the raindrops glittered against the glass like tiny reminders. Every act of kindness returns, even when you think it's lost. She turned off the lights, locked the door, and whispered into the quiet, "Thank you." Narrator, soft closing voiceover. Some letters never reach their destination, but the right ones, the true ones, always find their way home. Because gratitude isn't just a word, it's the bridge between strangers and the start of something extraordinary. If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Between Raindrops Stories. Tell us in the comments, have you ever thanked someone who changed your life, even without knowing it? Until next time, remember, some words are written once, but felt forever.